we established that earlier. So today, folks, yes, I am talking about NameFind, which is our GoDaddy house portfolio. It is what we believe to be the most valuable domain portfolio in the world. Thank you for the clarification there, Dolly. Domain portfolio. So, as you can see, you follow me on Twitter. My social guys wanted me to throw that up there, so Paul Nicks. Apparently, there was a Paul Nicks taken already. So let's get right into it. A couple years ago, GoDaddy had an opportunity. We had an opportunity to acquire a very large portfolio at what we consider to be very reasonable wholesale price. And GoDaddy had never operated a portfolio before, outside of our brands, of course. And what we were really trying to figure out is, how can we add value? You know, we obviously have the tools for others to sell their own portfolio. What does GoDaddy owning a portfolio do for us? And what we kept coming back to is a realization that many of the best portfolios in the world, and the most valuable portfolios, are not set to the standards that we ask most of our customers. And that's buy it now pricing, reasonable pricing. We really felt that some of these large, valuable portfolios were being held, being locked away. And small businesses that are getting online were not able to get these domains to start building on the brand that they really want. So in order to kind of prove our thesis to ourselves, we made the jump. We made the decision, said, you know what? We're going to go in. We're going to buy a portfolio. We're going to follow our own best practices. We're going to put buy it now prices on these things. We're going to set reasonable pricing. We're going to treat customers as we would want a sales team to treat, be partners in the sales journey. And let's see how that goes. You know, eat our own dog food, essentially. Well, that worked. And a couple years later now, because it worked the first time, we've bought more. So currently we have purchased 9 very large portfolios. We have a portfolio of over 700,000 domains, and we value them at by the GoDaddy appraisal tool at a little over $2.5 billion, which is why we think it's the most valuable portfolio in the world. So what we're going to get into today is how we operate. We've learned a lot by taking these names, putting them through the ringer, creating new sales processes, new pricing processes, and honestly, at this point, we're comfortable saying that we want to share that with you guys and show you how we operate so that you can maybe take something out of this. So first off, and what I'll do is I'll go through pricing, I'm going to go through sales techniques, and we'll go through a little bit on the acquisition front and let you know how the opportunities are still existing out there to build your own portfolios. But first, pricing. The very first thing that happens with a portfolio, and likely the most important. So what we have here, and I hope that you guys can see some of this, and I'll read some of the stats for you if you can't. What we have here is a breakdown of how our domains are priced throughout our portfolio. And what we do when we're doing a portfolio is we actually have 13 tiers of domain inventory. And the 13 tiers are based on ranges of prices. And then everything we do as far as sales tracking, lead tracking, management is based off of those tiers. What that allows us to do is it allows us to now also look at future portfolios, break down the pricing that we would assign on future portfolios into how well we know our current portfolios perform by tier. It gives us a very accurate means of appraising future potential revenue of portfolios by doing it in this manner. Now you'll see there is a bit of a bubble here. This is the tiers 8 through 10, which are $500 to $5,000. So roughly 85% of all of our NameFind portfolio is priced between that 500 and 5,000 range. And this is, as many of you well know, this is kind of the sweet spot for sales, and there's no coincidence that we want to make sure that the vast majority of our names are priced in a manner that a small business can look at it and say, yeah, this is valuable, this is worth it for my name. So again, we're pricing things in a point that we know they'll sell. All right, so we're going to look at a few specifics, because I want to give you guys a rundown of how we actually price. And we talk a lot about the GoDaddy appraisal tools, and that's certainly a part of it, but it is not the only part. And this is kind of these names, got 5 names here picked out that represent just a nice swath of names within that tiers 8 through 10 of ours, so within the 85% names. So you can see the first thing, we actually have 3 different machine algorithms. Used to be 2, and so we went ahead and created our own, which is the 3rd column. And so it's very important, when you're looking at acquiring a portfolio of hundreds of thousands of names, you need a good baseline for your team to work off of. And we found that the way that the machine appraisals work delivers that great baseline. We use 3 different ones because there are 3 different methodologies. Well, there are more than 3, but for those each of those 3, there are different methodologies. Some prefer to value a name based off of keywords, Google traffic, things of that nature, lead volume, etc. The GoDaddy valuation goes off of past sales. So it's a machine learned algorithm. It's 100% based off of actual sales for similar domain names. So that's if you get a nice range of valuations, you get a nice baseline. And you can see, actually, if you look at the t-shirt guy, the 3rd one, the middle one there, that's, the spread is between $550 and $3,300 on the appraisals. So it's within that same banding, that same tiering system, but certainly there is a range. So there's no consensus there. So how we get to a consensus is by running those machine appraisals through at least 2 pricing analysts. These pricing analysts are folks that work for GoDaddy that have been in the industry for many years as sales brokers for the most part, but also as pricing analysts for other companies. And so we've hired experts who kind of know a good value of names. And they don't always agree with each other or with the machine algorithm. So if you look at example on, again, the middle one, t-shirt guy is a great example. You got 2 different appraisers, human appraisers now, price the name between $1,300 and $3,300. It's still a couple grand apart on that name. But for the most part, you see a little bit more of a normalization. So the analysts, they kind of agree on the first one, they're very close on the second one. Then you go down the list, the last one there, it's agreed upon, it's just a number we're going to say. After they get to their consensus, then we get to an approver stage. So we have at least 2 approvers, myself being one of them, that looks at every one of the domains based off the analyst's pricing. And then we go through and normalize based off of what we know is selling from the NameFind portfolio. So a good example of an approver overriding the analysts and the machine values is the first domain, EcoX. So you can see it's got a dash. Doesn't really mean a lot. There's no one word necessarily, dictionary word in there. So the machine algorithms kind of look at it pretty low. Analysts didn't like it very much. But both approvers, and I believe I was approver 2 on this one, like the name because it's brandable. You know there are other companies that use it, SpaceX, PlanetX, etc. If it didn't have the dash in there, I would have set the price much higher, but with the dash, $3,000 just seemed better. So it's a little bit more of human thought into each of these pricing before we put them then as a final buy it now price. And then the final buy it now price, how that all shakes out is the last column there. Typically, even when the approvers disagree a little bit, so the only one we disagreed on was the second one, Barrage, we just put the buy it now as the higher of the 2 approvers. Gives us a little wiggle room to negotiate down if we need to. And that is an important point on the pricing is give yourself a little wiggle room to negotiate down. All right, so back to our pricing. We have two bands of how we actually distribute these names through our network. We put the vast majority, 99+% of all of our inventory is set to buy it now. So anything in the tiers from $50,000 on down, we're setting as buy it now pricing. And the rest is then make offer. So now make offer, obviously those are the very top quality names, requires a little bit more hand holding, a little bit more negotiation. So those are the ones that we feel are best left to negotiation, to a sales team. But the 99% is buy now. The reason we do buy now is very important. Buy now, up to 5x higher sell-through than just a straight make offer. So we've tracked the names prior to pricing and then after pricing. And with not just our own portfolio, but any of the large portfolios we work with, you'll see a much higher sell-through rate on buy now. And part of that is how we work on after DLS, the distribution to other registrars. Some people, some buyers, they don't want to negotiate. They think that there's an adversarial relationship with the seller of a domain name, and they'd prefer just to go and buy it now. We see that a lot. We want to make sure that our names are put out there, put our stamp on them with, this is what we're willing to accept, and distribute it throughout the DLS network. Okay, so that's how, of course, we get to our pricing. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what happens. What is our process when a lead comes in? We've got somebody who's calling us, emailing us, or submitting an offer through one of our networks. How do we do that? So a little bit different chart. If you don't look closely, you'll think it's the same exact one I just flashed, but it's not. What I'm showing here is the percentage of sales through our network, and then what pricing band they're sold through. So now we've got real good concentration on between 1,000 and 5,000. So about 55 to 58% of all of our sales happen between that $1,000 and $5,000 range. So of course, you connect the dots. These are the names that we have the most inventory of. These are the names that we price reasonably. These are the names that we put into buy it now and distribute through the DLS network. And that is the sweet spot, and that is where we concentrate most of our effort and our time. Because that is really, when you are thinking of the end user, you're thinking about somebody coming in, it's very easy to negotiate with somebody for a $3,000 name and help them to see that their idea is worth a $3,000 name. Much harder to convince somebody who maybe doesn't have the funding that their idea is worth $100,000. So let's look at those 5 names again. These names actually all sold last year. Pretty close to the buy now. And I wanted to point out, I've got some in here, the t-shirt guy is a good example. So even though we have buy it now pricing, and they're distributed throughout the network, not every one of these sales happens through the registrar channel. So we do have a negotiation. We have people calling in. And what the buy it now price does is it allows our sales team to look at it and say very easily, okay, top management has priced the name for t-shirt guy $3,300. It's pretty easy to say, yep, we'll take $2,500 for it if it's the right fit for the end user. And we will always default, if we know that this is somebody who's building a brand or building an online presence, we're gonna be able to work with them. So the majority of these names will sell by the buy it now price, but don't think just because it has a buy it now that is necessarily how it's going to sell. There's always still negotiation. What the buy it now does for you is it starts the process. It starts the negotiation. You've essentially put out the first price, and that gives a lot more credence to your ability, your knowledge of how these names operate. All right, so on this inventory, what I've shown here is what the spread is on inbound leads. Now this data does not include names that were purchased directly from a registrar at the buy now price, because those are typically 100% sell through, right, if they're already bought. So we're not worried about this. This is actually leads coming into our sales team that our sales team has to work on. So the majority of them coming from web, so about 80%, 79% coming through web leads. And this is the importance of having a way for somebody visiting your domain name, in our case on a park page, to get in touch with you. And this could be as easy as a link at the top saying, this domain is for sale, click this button to follow us through. That's what the Afrinic park pages mostly look like. It could be a lead form, something that is not even parked links, but instead, as soon as you visit that park page, it just has a form to fill out immediately and a phone number. And I'll talk about the importance of a phone number in a little bit. And I will say that the lead form is something that Smart Name customers, Afrinic customers have asked for a while. And I am happy to say that we have that available now. So if you're listing your inventory for sale in Afrinic, you can just put it to a lead form, and our sales team will be able to handle all those for you. The network leads, 21% of the network leads, those are coming through, say, from a GoDaddy auctions or somewhere else where somebody is submitting an offer on a domain name rather than buying it now. Okay, so you've got a lead coming in, you've got hot leads. Somebody's contacted you, let's say, through a lead form. What I want to go into is, how do you handle that initial conversation? How do you go ahead and take somebody from, I have an idea, this is a domain that matches my idea, oh crap, somebody already owns it, okay? So how do we get there? So first off, get on the phone. This is something that I think our team especially excels at, is getting a customer engaged. Means get them on the phone, talk to them. If we get somebody on the phone, we have a 46% higher chance of selling that domain name than if we just negotiate over email. Significant difference. So of course, get them on the phone. One of the things that we have found is that although ideas and excitement are always there, it ebbs. So if you have the ability to conduct a conversation with somebody within the first 24 hours of a lead coming in, you have a 20% higher chance of closing that sale than if you don't make contact until the second 24 hours. So just a one-day difference means a 20% chance of losing that sale. So it's a big deal. So how we operate, how we do this, and just for stats for you guys, any lead that comes into the NameFind sales team, in the first 48 hours, we make 4 different phone calls and send 4 different emails to try to get this customer on the phone, try to get them engaged. And I say the emails are actually calls to action to call us, to talk to us. So we are very active, and it's important to note here that this is not just the NameFind sales team. This is the Afrinic sales team. So anybody here who has their names listed through Afrinic and has a lead form on their park page or this domain for sale link to the Afrinic sales team, they get the same exact process. We modeled everything we do for NameFind sales off of what Afrinic does today. All right. So now you've got them. You've got them on the phone. You're talking to them. You've done it within the first 24 hours. You have set yourself up for success for this particular lead. How do you handle that conversation? Most importantly, and this is where having setting yourself up not as an adversary, but as a partner is where you need to get. You need to empathize with the customer. So GoDaddy's mission, right, is to shift the global economy towards life-fulfilling, independent ventures. Love that mission. The heart of it is understanding what that life-fulfilling, independent venture is for the person that you have on the phone. What is their dream? It doesn't have to be a big brand, right? It could be somebody who has a soccer blog. What is it that they are trying to accomplish? Ask questions. The more questions you ask, the more excited the person on the other line is going to be about telling you about their idea. And then you start to shift the conversation. You're no longer kind of the adversary in a negotiation. You're the partner in making sure that this person is able to achieve what they're looking for, achieve their dream by putting the right brand on it. So ask questions, empathize, understand who they are, understand why they're doing this, get the right rapport going, and then you can move on to the next stage of tapping the brakes a little bit on expectations. So this is the part, after you've done the questions, after you understand them fully, this is the part where you start to set the baseline of why domains are valuable. So, talking points could be there are over 330 million domains registered in the world. For the most part, the aftermarket, somebody's already thought of an idea. Lucky for you, customer, we have this one that is a perfect match for you, and it is available. And we've owned it for quite some time and have a good amount of investment in it. So let's talk about how much that time is worth to you and how much the time of that domain is worth. So set the expectations that this isn't going to be a $10 domain. Comps. So sometimes people don't understand the aftermarket, believe it or not, right? Everyone in this room understands domains have value, domains can sell. Majority of the world does not. If you were able to point out specific examples of domain names that are similar to the ones that are being looked at, that have sold, what you do is you kind of get in the back of somebody's head, the buyer's head, that they are not being taken for a ride. This is something that happens. This is not a scam. Domains sell. Part of that, if you just rattle off names that have sold out of your portfolio to somebody, it doesn't add a lot of credence, it doesn't add a lot of value to the customer, but they may still have that adversarial topic in the back of their head. So that's why when we did the GoDaddy appraisal, we've actually put comparable domain names right in line with what we value the domain at. So if you're able to say, hey, GoDaddy has this price, let's go see what GoDaddy does. And then on the GoDaddy appraisal, we'll put an appraisal of the name, but more importantly, we'll say why that name is valuable. And hopefully you can use the GoDaddy brand to set the expectation of this customer that, yes, okay, GoDaddy is a trusted partner, also sees value in this name. We also have shown that these are names that are valuable, that have sold recently. And there's an air of authority behind that. Now, if the GoDaddy appraisal comes in less than what you're asking, then it's still a conversation to have, right? It's still I see GoDaddy appraises this at $2,500. But the reality is that this domain is a plural versus a singular, or singular versus a plural, and the comparable sales aren't really there. You see the comparable sales aren't as great of a brand as the one you're looking at. It still is a conversation piece. And it's something anchored in real data that you can talk to a customer about. And then you're going to get the emotion. So once you give a price, once you start negotiating on a price, you're going to have the, oh my God, what are you doing to me? This is my dream and you own it, or any number of fun, emotional responses. At this point, you get into the whole sales toolkit. You get to talk about how you have seen in your years of selling domain names, the right domain does wonders for a brand. It establishes your legitimacy on the internet. It potentially gives you ownership of an entire block of an industry on the internet. How much is that marketing worth? How much does that customer have to pay for every single lead that they get through a lead generation company or through a Google AdSense AdWords? How much is their marketing budget for that year versus how many organic leads they're going to come through just by owning that space on the internet? This is where you set the real value, not of that domain name in a vacuum, but you set the real value of that domain to that customer that you've already built that rapport with. You are now, remember from the very beginning, you are a partner with theirs. You are on that journey with them to make sure the right name lands in their hands. So you need to do your best to make them understand they're not just buying a domain name that then they can put the website on. They're buying their brand. That's very important to understand. So, gone through pricing, gone through sales. How do you build your own portfolio? This is something that I think is interesting. GoDaddy, of course, we have acquired our own portfolios via wholesale value, bulk purchases. That's not available to everybody. We understand that. But wholesale buying of domain names is available. There are opportunities that pop up every day on the wholesale markets that allow you to go in, look based off of what your area of expertise are. What industries do you know well? What are you good at selling? What price ranges are you good at? And then you go to the wholesale markets. So the names I've got listed here, these are names that were sold last year on GoDaddy auctions, GoDaddy Expiry. And then on the right column, I have what our GoDaddy valuation is of these. We're going to look at a few of them, but you can say just in general looking at them. These were not names that were picked up for $10 or $11, right? These had active bidders. These had wholesale buyers were going in and bidding on this inventory. And the last man standing on each one of these got a name that they felt was a good wholesale price that they could turn around and flip. Now, if I were looking at these and I were able to say, wow, let's just look at, my favorite on the list is actually, looks like the sixth one down, Santuku. It's a cool name. It's a one-word.com. Describes a nice, easy thing to sell online. Sold for $825. GoDaddy values it at about $4,700. If you were to put a $5,000, $6,000 price on that name, even $8,000, $9,000, I don't think anybody in this room would dispute that within 5 to 10 years, that name should sell for above $5,000, even in the $4,700 range. And you start doing the math on that, $825 for the initial purchase price, 5 years, I'd call it $10 a year for registration, you're still less than $900 of an investment for a domain that you know should be able to sell for $5,000. So this is where the opportunity still exists. And this is why we are investing so heavily in the GoDaddy auctions platform, bringing in as much inventory as we can with new registrar partners, the GoDaddy inventory, et cetera, is to get this wholesale to retail flow really going. And so any of these other ones, just go through the list if you want, but any of the other ones is the same exact story. Even on the high end, it's the lighted.com, so one-word.com, actually, I prefer cigars, not .net, honestly. Purchased $3,700, valued over $11,000. Again, wholesale price wasn't $10, wasn't $11, but it was absolutely worth it for those names. So I've talked a little bit about how GoDaddy prices using our own algorithm, how we have a sales team that handles all these inbound sales, how we have the Afternic DLS distribution network, how we sell our domains from NameFind. And I want to make it very clear, if it's not already, NameFind is using the same exact tools, the same exact processes that are available to every one of you. So if you go to the GoDaddy booth, you'll get a code for a domain appraisal. And what this does is it allows you to go into GoDaddyAppraisals.com and do bulk appraisals for up to 100,000 domains. If you have 200,000 domains in your portfolio, we'll give you 2 sheets of paper. And we may want to talk to you about buying it. But this tool, this appraisal tool, this is something we're doing. Replicate that. Go off, use our tools. Let's see where they are. Put buy now prices on it. Once you're pricing it, put it into Afternic DLS. So the DLS network distributes your domains to 18 of the top 20 registrars in the world. Hundreds of registrar partners are set up, including exclusively with GoDaddy. Nobody gives you a broader audience for your sales than Afternic. Those tools exist. NameFind uses the exact same system to list our inventory. And the sales team. Our sales team is very special, but not unique. So the NameFind sales team is built off of the Afternic sales team. These are the same guys that handle inbound leads, and they use the same process to handle inbound leads for our owned and operated portfolio, that you can have them work for you on your portfolio. All you need to do is set your page up on SmartName or Afternic to list it as this domain for sale, or use our new lead form that just has a big phone number right there. Again, phone number is very important, so the customer can call in. And an added benefit of this is, if you're called from the previous slides, you want to maintain a relationship with the customer, with the buyer. If the customer is calling in to Afternic, then they're not calling into the person they are trying to negotiate with to own that name. That adversarial relationship disappears. They're now working with a trusted, branded broker who works on behalf of the seller, yes, but who has the ability to empathize and ask the right questions. So this is available to you. And then, of course, anything else on the sales side, some people just don't want to do it themselves. Right? It's kind of daunting, especially when you're talking about tens of thousands of names. You may be saying to yourself, hey, I've already got them priced. I don't want to go through this whole process. I've got it listed somewhere else. What's the benefit? We have a team set up. So partnersales@afternic.com. Partner sales team, they'll do it for you. All you have to do is contact, reach out. Let's have that conversation. We will help you price. We will help you list your names. We will help you, we'll handle the sales leads if you want. We'll talk to you about how to handle the sales leads if you want. This is not something you have to do alone. We are all out here doing this together. If you want to run your portfolio like GoDaddy runs theirs, talk partner sales. They're happy to help you. We have staffed up to be able to handle these requests, and we do pretty well. So that's it for me. Thank you. Bill, I believe we have some time now for questions.
Lucky to have, there we go. We're very lucky to have time we have about 10 minutes for questions. And so I ask the audience to please think of some great questions for Paul. While you do that, I'm just going to ask Paul a question. You provided some really insightful tips in terms of negotiating with a potential buyer. One of the things you talked about was providing comparables. Any thoughts or advice around letting that person know how many previous inquiries there may have been on that name, if there were previous inquiries? Would that help?
Absolutely. So if you have the data that shows that there has been other interest, that is valuable. Often a buyer won't care how many other buyers there are, but if you're trying to, where that really helps is if you're trying to close a deal quickly. If you feel there's a sense of urgency, you feel that somebody is maybe on the edge, they kind of want to do it and maybe not, saying, hey, there's been quite a bit of other interest in this name. I've had 5 other people make offers in the past. It happens in real estate, and every time that you go to buy a house, you're darn sure that your real estate agent is going to say, well, I've got 5 other offers, right? That works. And it works just to set an urgency to the sale.
Great, thank you, Paul. We've got a question over here. If you could stand up, please.
Sure, thanks for your time. Two-part question. How do you evaluate, what criteria do you use to evaluate potential new portfolio acquisitions? And then what do you think of the new GTLDs as premium names or aftermarket? What's your thoughts on that
All right.
industry?
Two-parter. So we'll start with the first. Whenever we look at a new portfolio, we now have enough data that we're able to break out that portfolio into our tiering. And if we can see that that portfolio, based off of the GoDaddy appraisal, looks like it slots nicely into the tiers that we like, again, that $500 to $5,000 range, where the majority of them are, then we can then extrapolate and say, okay, we know that these tiers perform with this sell-through rate at this average sales price, and we can extrapolate to that portfolio, just based off of that data, what we think that portfolio will make in X years out. And then we're able to say, okay, what is the value to GoDaddy of a portfolio that will make us $10 million over 5 years, or whatever that may be. And that's where the finance guys kind of get involved, of course. But that's how we're valuing it, is we're taking the makeup, the architecture of a particular portfolio, layering it on top of the makeup and the architecture of our current portfolio, and we're able, with pretty good accuracy, determine what the sell-through should be, what the average sales price should be of each of those names, so that we can make a value on that. And as far as the new Gs go, initially, the second portfolio we purchased, we had the opportunity to buy a lot of new GTLD inventory, and we weren't good enough. We didn't know what we didn't know, right? We weren't confident enough in our ability to sell those, especially at a higher carrying cost many times, to pull the trigger and acquire loans. A couple years have passed now. I think that market is starting to pick up. You know, obviously Donut's had a couple of really big sales with the Home.loans and a few others recently. So I think the value is there. I think it's much harder to normalize than the common net. So I cannot take a new GTLD portfolio today and layer it on top of known data and say this is how I think that this should theoretically run at. So it's harder for me as a large portfolio operator to make that. It's got to be a little bit more of a leap of faith than what we typically do.
Thanks, Paul. We've got a question over here. You can stand up, please.
Thank you, Paul. Bobby from .com.au downloads. We have a portfolio of about 20,000 .com.au's. CCTLDs, do you have the ability to appraise those as well?
You know, CCTLDs, we have the ability to price them. The appraisal tool will price any TLD. What we don't have is a lot of history, sales history to work off of. And that is important for all of this. So for the CCs, the more data we get, the better our appraisals are going to be. And I mentioned earlier, the machine learned algorithm we use today is 100% based off of past sales. And so if you don't have a wealth of data to figure out what keywords sell in the particular CCs, especially like a .com.au, there may be keywords that sell very well down there that don't sell typically in the US or on .com. I'm not sure. And that's the hard part. I'm not sure. So it's hard to price those.
All right, we've got a question over here. Thank you, Paul. David, if you could please stand up with your question for Paul.
Hey, Paul, back to your initial response when somebody makes an inquiry on a name. It's interesting, the 48% more sales for the phone call going out. Did I hear you say that you send 4 emails and make 4 calls in that first 24 hours?
At most. So if we are able to contact the customer on the first call, we won't call 3 more times and send 4 emails. If we are unable to contact, then yes, we send a total of 4 emails and 4 outbound calls to try to get that customer on the phone in the first 48 hours. And that's true for NameFind, and that's true for afternight inbound sales as well.
All right, another question over here.
I'm curious why no keyword information in your appraisal tool, just comps?
So we do have some of the data we put out. So maybe some of you have seen on GoDaddy.com, if you're looking at a domain that's listed through Afternic now, we actually put an appraisal inline on the domain. And we also put bullet points of data inline. And some of those bullet points are, this is a valuable, or let's call it the word global. Global is a valuable keyword to have within a domain name, if that's the truth. So we will put some sort of abstract concepts around the keywords. But typically what we like to do is put the comparable domain sales on there. They're heavily keyword driven. I mean, the keyword breaking and then matching up comparable sales based off of that is a very large part of how we do the comparable sales. But calling it out It's just something we do more in abstract.
We've got time maybe for 2 more questions. I got one here, so whoever wants to be the last one, make sure you wave your hand. You can just stand up, please.
Hi, this is Dave Bhatia from DNA Sequencing. My question is, how do you appraise a word which is not an English word? It might make sense to somebody else from a different culture, from a different country, but not to the person who is appraising it.
Yeah, that's the great thing actually about having a machine learned algorithm. It's not a human that understands only 1 or 2 languages that's doing the appraisal. What it is you've got an algorithm that's able to break it off, and we've got corpus of many different languages within the system so that we can understand a domain name coming into the system. We can understand what the keywords are, what the keyword split of those domain names are, so that we can then compare to past sales from those keywords, be it English or not. The machine doesn't care.
All right, one final question here. Annette, if you could stand up.
All my names are with GoDaddy, and my broker they say one of my names is worth $2,500, but I want $3,000. So I want to list it. Can a person that these customers just use that same tool weekend, and they'll see that it's only worth $2,500?
Well, you say only worth.
I mean, can they see the same?
Yeah, absolutely. So a customer that comes in to GoDaddy to do an appraisal, they're going to see the same value that we would spit out on the bulk appraisal side for an investor. And you know what, we understand that you may be looking to get more than what the domain is appraised at, and that's okay. We price our domains, perhaps earlier on the slide where we had the buy now price, the final approvers are typically always a little bit higher as the buy now price than what the machine algorithms put on there. There is wiggle room for negotiation we put in there, and a lot of times those actually sell at a higher price. So I think one of the last names, architecturalpanels.com, was a machine learned algorithm said about $2,500. The approver said it was a little bit better. We put it at $5,000, and it sold at $5,000. So yes, the customer does have that ability to go through there, but a more educated customer is not a bad thing. You think of what leads you're getting now. If the customer has to start with a price, they're going to start with $50, $200. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to turn those $50 or those $200 as feeler inquiries into a more educated $2,500, $3,000. So that it's a little bit easier to take them from here to here than from way over here to here.
Thank you for those great questions. We've come to the end of the presentation. So if you have any further questions for Paul, please chat with him after this session. You'll see him around the conference, maybe at the
Booth 11.